standing on the eastern shore of the Lake of Galilee. You can see the sun setting behind me on the cliffs of Arbel, and also of the city of Tiberias, just there in the lights. That side of the west was where most Jewish people lived, but here on the eastern shore was a Gentile area. It was called the Decapolis, or the 10 cities. And in this area, there were many Gentiles whom Jesus tried to reach, as well as the Jews. Today's story is going to be about a man who came running out of the tombs when Jesus and his disciples landed on the other side of the lake. The disciples were scared and wanted to just shove right back off again, go back over to the other side, their side of the lake. But Jesus came here for a specific purpose. There was a man who needed to understand that our God is the God of all people. It doesn't matter whether you're Jewish or you're Gentile. Jesus had a point of healing for that man, and he came all the way here in order to find it. I invite you to stand as we read the gospel this morning. They went across the lake to the region of the Gerasenes. Jesus got out of the boat. A man with an impure spirit came from the tombs to meet him. This man lived in the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain. For he had often been chained hand and foot. But he tore the chains apart and broke the irons on his feet. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and in the hills, he would cry out and cut himself with stones. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and fell on his knees in front of him. He shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? In God's name, don't torture me." For Jesus had said to him, "Come out of this man, you impure spirit." And Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" "My name is Legion," he replied, "for we are many." And he begged Jesus again and again not to send them out of the area. Now a large herd of pigs was feeding on a nearby hillside. The demons begged Jesus, "Send us among the pigs. Allow us to go into them." He gave them permission. And the impure spirits came out and went into the pigs. The herd, about 2,000 in number, rushed down the steep bank into the lake and were drowned. Those tending the pigs ran off and reported this in the town and countryside, and people went out to see what had happened. When they came to Jesus, they saw the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons, sitting there, dressed in his right mind, and they were afraid. Those who had seen it told the people what had happened to the demons as man, and told about the pigs as well. But the people begged Jesus to leave their region. As Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed begged to go with him. Jesus did not let him go, but said, "Go home to your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he had mercy on you." So the man went away and began to tell in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him. And all the people were amazed. The word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. Please be seated. Let's forget all about the demons, shall we? Truth be told, when it comes to demons, most of us are about as balanced as I would be in a tutu on a tightrope. Some folks see demons behind every bush, lurking everywhere and in everything. So as one commentator has put it, if your wife or your husband is cranky, it's a demon. If the car won't start, it's a demon. Every bump and scrape and minor incident is the work of a demon. When it comes to some folks, it seems like everyone that they know has demons. So every problem is solved by casting out a demon, and they cast them out at every opportunity. They cast out demons of clumsiness, demons of tooth decay, even demons of high mortgage payments. If there were demons of jet lag, I would confess that I would willfully invite an airline exorcist to come right now. These well-meaning people, however, totally eliminate any sense of personal responsibility by calling every wrong choice and every selfish, sinful action the handiwork of the devil and his cohorts. And the result is that rather than live in continuous victory with Jesus, these folks live in continuous conflict with all the evil forces out there. Because of their preoccupation, they live in constant conflict with many other people as well. On the other hand, those who underemphasize demons seem to have adopted the idea that if we ignore the devil or pretend that he's not real, that he will simply go away and he'll leave us alone. Many people have convinced themselves in the sophistication of our modern times that such things as demons and devilish forces, indeed such a personality as Satan or the devil himself, don't really exist. They're simply metaphoric ideas of a pre-scientific and superstitious age, expressing what we might today more intelligently call mental illness. I tend to believe, however, that ironically enough, people who think that way are a bit naive. Because there is something wrong with some folks. Not even all the medical science can help to explain it. That was clearly the case with the man in our story this morning from Mark's Gospel, his account of the life of Jesus for busy people as we've been reading it through this season of Lent. It's perhaps a mark of the general confusion surrounding this man that biblical scholars can't even nail down exactly where he lived. A few days ago, those of us that made the Israel study trip got to visit a century of the first century, a place called Gamla. That's Aramaic for camel. It would have been in the general area where this guy lived. Some manuscripts say he was from the region of the Gerasenes. Others say he was a Gergesene. So others say he was a Gadarene. Gerasene, Gergesene, Gadarene, Listerine. Who knows? You say tomato, I say tomata. Let's call the whole thing off. All we can really say, though, he lived on the eastern side of the Sea of Galilee, the other side of the lake, somewhere close to the fabled Decapolis, or 10 cities, that had been built by the Romans to impress all the locals. They were inhabited not so much by Jews, but primarily by Gentiles. We know that not only because the text says that, but because of the presence of a large herd of swine, animals that Jews considered decidedly unkosher and ceremonially unclean. Likewise, we can read that this man who had an unclean or evil spirit lived in the tombs, that no one could subdue him even with a chain. Now, to be fair, it was not unheard of to live in the tombs. Sometimes the very poor had nowhere else to take shelter but in those caves that were carved out of the rocky limestone hillsides. But this guy, night and day, Mark says, he spent his time yelling and crying and cutting himself the same way that some young and even older people do today, as a way of trying to cope with the pain of strong emotions or intense pressures or feelings that they don't have any other way to handle. They cut themselves because they are desperate to find relief from their rage or rejection, their loneliness or their emptiness, which makes this odd little story already seem a little more recognizable to us, doesn't it? Who hasn't, at some time, felt those feelings of self-regret and remorse, thinking we should punish ourselves for what we've said or we've done that we know was wrong? Who hasn't found themselves haunted by the memory of the failures of their previous mistakes, their inadequacies, their inappropriate appetites, or their ambitions? Who hasn't felt at least once like resigning from the human race, thinking that people would surely be better off if we just weren't here anymore? Which is no doubt why this man had long since living in the town and had retreated to live by himself out in the tombs. Dr. Luke tells us in his version of the story that this man had not even worn clothes
for a long time. So we can well imagine, can't we, that the parents in that town, wherever it was, warned their children about him. Stay away from the graveyard. That's where that crazy naked guy is. Having lost all sense of pride in himself, all sense of personal dignity, this man had become socially isolated from everybody else, driven to a solitary place where no one else ever went. Until that is, Jesus came along one day. Deliberately, we might note, making the treacherous passage across the Sea of Galilee by night so that he could get to the other side by early morning. To the precise location, in fact, where this man was, Mark tells us that the minute Jesus got out of the boat, that crazy naked guy came out from the tombs to meet him. And then he shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God?" It's a little peculiar. We've already seen in the previous chapters of Mark, the Pharisees didn't seem to know who Jesus was. The Sadducees didn't know who he was. Even the disciples, they weren't completely sure. But this crazy naked guy, he taught him Jesus, Son of the Most High God. See, though we may not always recognize evil, evil always knows who God is. The problem was, this man had long before lost himself. He didn't know who he was anymore. That's why Jesus asked him his name, I think. Now, some will say that Jesus was speaking to the demons here, trying to trick them into telling him their names so they don't be able to exorcise them. Kind of a religious Rumpelstiltskin story. Jesus never resorted to such shaman-like procedures. He didn't need to. He was speaking to the man in the tombs himself, asking what his name was in order to make him realize that he still had a personality separate from the evil spirits that had entered into him. It was like saying, "My friend, what's the matter with you? How did you ever get to be this way? Don't you even remember who you were, who you used to be?" To which the man in the tombs answered simply, "My name is Legion, for we are many." Why was that a vivid use of imagery? Especially in that Roman area. A legion was the single largest unit in the Roman army. A legion had about 6,000 soldiers in it. This man would have seen those kinds of legions in the great Roman cities of the Decapolis. So in his tortured mind, the name Legion made perfect sense. There were more likely thousands of voices and fears that swirled around in his life. Fears, anger, hatreds, desires he couldn't control. This man in the tombs, you see, he had no centurion to make them march in any one direction or order. They went off in all kinds of directions. I got to tell you, that sounds a little familiar to me as well. Sometimes I want to be loving, but I'm envious. Sometimes I want to care, but I'm careless. Sometimes I want to serve Christ, but I'm ambitious instead for things I can touch and taste and tote around to show others how important I really am. And maybe, just maybe, you're the same way this morning. Years ago, William James, the psychologist, lectured at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland. And a little old cleaning lady listened from the back of the room. When she was asked afterwards what the famous scholar had said, she replied, "Ach, for the life of me, I cannot ken what he said. But he gave a grand speech on fragmation," or something like that. Fragmation. It's a pretty good word. It describes Legion's life, which was fragmented indeed. Divided against itself, out of touch not only with others, but out of touch with himself. And we're not told in this story how the man got to where he was. But I would guarantee you that he hadn't always been that way. But at some point, something happened. At some point, something he did he knew wasn't right. Maybe a little thing, just a critical spirit maybe, or a hidden sin. He probably felt guilty about it at first. Then he got away with it. Began to slowly learn how to ignore not only the guilt, but the warning signals as well, going further and further until he had alienated himself from others. That's the term which the ancients used for an insane person, by the way. They were alienated. Until eventually, having let his failures fester up in him, he was unable to live with anybody else. He didn't even live with himself. True spiritual tug of war. And the man in the tombs, he was the rope. And maybe, just maybe, you felt at times like your life is a similar rope. A similar battleground, a similar testing place where forces beyond your ability have come to control you, and they've pulled you away from the life you want. They've pushed you instead into a life in the tombs. But if so, I want you to look closely at what Jesus did for this man. Jesus not only encountered this crazy naked guy, he demonstrated once and for all that he's not only the Lord of life, he is a conqueror even of evil and unclean spirits. That is to say, in the light of his holiness, they cannot stand. They cannot proceed with their devilish ways. And they know it. That's why the demons begged Jesus not to send them out of the area. Send us instead into the pigs. So Jesus did. And the swine promptly marched right off the cliff into the sea where they drowned, gone forever. Probably not what those demons had in mind. They probably never dreamed that the health and wholeness of one man was worth the cost of an entire herd. Who would say that? You see, what Jesus did for that man in the tombs was not only to drive out the demons from his life, it was to give that life back to him, to give that dignity back to him, to give him back his place in the community, even to give him back his senses. But when the fellows who were tending those swine told others in town what had happened, people from that area all came out to see Jesus. And the gospel tells us they found the man who had lived in the tombs when the demons had gone out from, sitting at Jesus' feet, dressed and in his right mind. And you would think that would have impressed them, right? You'd think that would have led them to accept Jesus and worship him. Scared them half to death and made them angry. 2,000 sheep, 2,000 pigs, gone. They were so overcome with their fear and their anger, they cordially invited Jesus to leave their area. You see, when Jesus sent Legion into the herd of pigs who then promptly dove into the lake, he cut their business, enraging them so much, they said, "Go away and trouble us no more." I have to tell you, that's unfortunately the way that it will often be. When the power of God starts working, really working in people's lives, when alcoholics and drug addicts and the mentally insane actually change, other people won't always be impressed. They'll be afraid, and occasionally, if they're used to whatever dysfunction that individual may have had, or they've learned how to profit from it somehow, they'll be mad when they change, even for the better. I've seen it happen in family after family. When someone breaks free of alcoholism or drug addiction, and their families are the very ones who have gotten used to that dysfunction and use it as a means of control. Fortunately for the man in the tombs, the master didn't let even that kind of negative selfish reaction from other people stop him from redeeming a man whose life had gotten out of control. In fact, read this story carefully. You may come to conclude that the only reason Jesus went to the Decapolis that day, this was not even a Jewish region again, was because there was a man from whom the dark side of life had captured, but Jesus wanted to reclaim him. It's not a coincidence that in all three Gospels that record this story, it's preceded immediately by the story of the storm at sea. that swamped the boat in which Jesus and his disciples were traveling. I suspect that the storm was merely an attempt to prevent Jesus' arrival at that graveyard. For when the devil knows that God is moving in people's lives, he will stop at nothing to try to prevent that from happening. Don't be naive about this. How encouraging it is, though. Neither storms, nor demons, nor even selfish neighbors could stand before the circumstance-changing, life-redeeming power of Jesus. Not long ago, on the other side of the lake, not now and here, in this place either. If you have let sinful habits or shame or guilt linger so long in your life, they've now hardened over and provided an entry point for sin. If your life seems to be out of control this morning, if you feel like you may be living in the tombs a little bit, or you've lost your dignity, or you've lost your friendships, maybe you've even lost your personality, I want to tell you this morning that you're in luck today. We just happen to have Jesus with us this morning, at whose name every demon must flee. Must. If you're haunted by your past or by an addictive habit that you can't seem to break, you can invite Jesus to come and do for you today what he did for that man living in the tombs so long ago. Because you see, I believe Jesus would like for us to stop walking in fear every day, to stop feeling isolated from others, to stop living in the tombs and get dressed and in our right minds and sit at the feet of the Master instead. Make that your prayer this morning. And Jesus will come calling on you today. And once he has, then do one more thing. The man in the tombs, when Jesus got ready to leave, said, "Take me with you. I don't like these people. They don't like me." I served the church like that one time. Take me with you, please. And Jesus said, "You stay here. Go home and tell others how much the Lord has done for you." You know, the next time Jesus came back to the Decapolis, other side of the lake, thousands came out to hear him, to receive him, to understand what he was saying. Somebody out there is waiting to hear that word from you today, my dear friends. Somebody so lost they can't even imagine there's a way home again. Somebody who doesn't know who they are anymore, and whom life has swallowed up. And they swallowed the lie that their name is now Legion. Go tell them what Jesus has done for you. And all will be amazed. Amen.